Blizzard might have just saved the season because they dropped a huge out of nowhere retail patch that fixes a ton of different characters, including changes to Doomfist, Orisa, Ramattra, Tracer, Ana, and Kiriko, but notably Roadhog is untouched, and we gotta talk about why that is, so we're gonna break it all down, but do me a huge solid and smash that subscribe button, and let's jump right in. Now, first off, we have Doomfist. The Rocket Punch cooldown got increased from 3 to 4 seconds, which is going to just make it so you're going to have less Rocket Punches consistently. The Power Block minimum damage mitigated required to empower Rocket Punch increased from 80 to 100 damage. This is going to require you to intentionally force out a lot more damage, and you are going to get far more punished for using a Power Block that doesn't get you that Empower Rocket Punch. This is a really big deal, as I'm sure you know, a Doomfist that just consistently doesn't get Rocket Punches right now doesn't get a ton of value or can't make a lot of plays, and it's going to be harder to do that. Now, the biggest change is the best defense, which is this passive, the temporary health gained per target hit with abilities decreased from 40 to 35. So all these changes really add up to tune Doomfist more in line. They're not crazy huge individually, but all combined, they tune Doomfist to a point where he's still powerful, his ultimate's still good, the character could still be great if you're great at him, but he's not completely overpowered and broken, although with the elephant in the room Roadhog not being nerfed, I don't entirely know how strong Doomfist is going to be, because the Roadhog matchup was already bad, but the Rocket Punch and the best defense changes are going to make the matchup even worse. Now, you might be wondering, what do I mean that Roadhog is not getting changed? We have to understand that because of a bug, a technical issue, it's preventing hot fixes to Roadhog at this time, and they plan to address him in a future update. We don't have an ETA, but he's going to not be changed. So yeah, we're going to be in a Roadhog meta. Surprise the fucking prize. But Roadhog ain't going nowhere. We are getting some changes to Kiriko though, which can affect him. We'll talk about those in a second. Next up, we got Orisa. The Terra Surge, her ultimate now pierces through barriers upon impact. This is a really big deal because honestly, this is one of the weakest ultimates in the game, and being able to pierce through those barriers, especially against a character like Winston, hypothetically, or Ryan, can actually get you more legitimate value with it. Next up, the Augmented Fusion Driver. The primary fire, the damage fall-off range increased from 15 to 25 meters. This just makes Orisa more powerful as a slightly longer distance threat. It's going to up her overall effectiveness, having less fall off range. I don't think that this shifts Orisa to being meta or anything like that, but Orisa was already a fairly good counter to a character like Doomfist, so just adding a little bit more power, making her more versatile in the mid fight is overall a decent thing. Next off, we got to talk about Ramattra, who received some pretty interesting buffs. Nemesis form, movement speed increased by 20%, armor bonus increased from 150 to 225. Remember, one of the biggest problems with Ramattra is Ramattra didn't have any form of speed, so you almost always needed to play Ramattra in the brawl form with a Lucio, but now you have a fast Ramattra when you activate Nemesis form, and even in addition to that, if you do have speed, you're going to be zooming in like Dive Ramattra is here. And then of course, the Void Barrier Omnic form cooldown reduced from 15 to 13 seconds. This is a decent change, but all in all, these aren't huge changes. That movement change can be pretty big, and the armor bonus can be pretty big, and it's actually pushing Ramattra towards the brawl aspect of the kit. The poke is still fairly weak. I was expecting some increase in damage to the poke, but instead they're opting to not increase damage at all, but just allow Ramattra to chase down targets with that Nemesis form. It's an interesting take. I don't know if it's going to make Ramattra strong enough to see play, but perhaps coupled this with the changes that they're going to eventually do to Roadhog, Ramattra might finally find their place in the meta. Next up, we got to talk about Sojourn. Sojourn's primary fire spread increased by 28%. This is a big deal because it decreases her overall damage, makes it so she's less effective from ranges, and especially because like the first 9 bullets were like first shot accurate. Now you're not going to be able to be nearly as consistent at building up that secondary alternate fire. The disruptor shot no longer slows enemy movement. That is huge. That is a really big deal. That was one of her best tools to fight against characters like Genji or Winston. Anyone that wanted to jump on top of her, Disruptor Shot being able to slow was a very big deal. And personally, I'm glad they got rid of it. You know why? Because slowing opponents, guess what? That's CC. Guess who doesn't even get CC anymore? Freaking Cassidy. I know it's a different type of CC, but if you're going to take away CC from the majority of characters in the game, don't give it to the new character. It makes no freaking sense, especially not CC and a one-shot. It like goes against everything else that they have followed. I don't know. Whatever. I'm happy that this has happened. I think most people could agree. And the power slide cooldown increased from 6 to 7 seconds. This is overall good. This is one of my suggestions in the previous video where I said that she should be more punished for utilizing her power slide aggressively or being forced to use it. So increasing that cooldown, that's a big deal. It's going to make it easier to punish Sojourn. Overall, this is all good stuff to the character, and I think it brings her more back in line with where she should be, although that Mercy Pocket Sojourn is still potentially a little bit too powerful. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Next up, we got to talk about Tracer. Damage reduced from 6 to 5.5. Poor Tracer, you're not a god anymore. You're back in line with where you were before. Tracer's still fine, but for a little while, Tracer was an absolute god, and I'm a little bit sad that I didn't play Tracer more during this time. Next up, we got to talk about Ana. Biotic Rifle damage healing increased from 70 to 75. 75 damage per shot. That's a big freaking deal. And in addition to that, the effect duration increased from 3 to 4 seconds on the Biotic Grenade. So this means when you actually do hit the Biotic Grenade on a target and it doesn't get Suzu'd, now you're gonna have more effect. I think that's a great thing. It's gonna be easier to punish a Roadhog, because oftentimes what would happen is even if you didn't Suzu a Roadhog, if you naded a Roadhog at full health, you would get him down low, and then he would actually be able to heal himself because the Biotic Grenade would fade before y'all could focus him down. Now you have a window to actually kill him. Extra damage is crazy. I mean, that's just like a really, really big deal. And I think the big key point that you need to consider here is now 3 shots do 225 damage. Now, this can mean you can 3-shot characters that do receive a little bit of healing that are 200 HP, but it also means that you can 3-shot characters like Cassidy with 225 HP, which you couldn't do before. So yeah, all in all, Ana kind of looking cracked right now. Now, last but certainly not least, we have Kiriko. They actually have removed her protection Suzu. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. They decreased the invincibility or the invulnerability duration from protection Suzu from 1 to 0.85 seconds. This is going to give you more opportunity to punish a Kiriko and punish other players that Kiriko is protecting, because a lot of times what would happen is, let's say you were trying to attack someone, the Suzu would last long enough that even though the Suzu went out and you like intentionally waited a second, or maybe you attacked them moments after the Suzu went out, it would still keep them invulnerable, and it could be pretty frustrating in some situations. So now Suzu needs to be done more deliberately. It's going to save people, but only for a small amount of time, and I've even seen arguments to decrease this even more to like 0.5 seconds, but for now, any changes to Suzu I think is a good thing. Overall, it's not ruining the character, but it is increasing the skill ceiling slightly because you have to be more precise with this Suzu ability. Now, all in all, I do like a lot of the changes in this patch, although I'm not entirely sure if the Sojourn changes are enough, especially with the Mercy Pocket. That's my first concern that we have. And then the second concern that I have is that Roadhog is not being touched. I think we're still going to be sitting in a Roadhog meta, but Ana is more powerful now, so at least with Ana more powerful and Kiriko slightly less powerful, perhaps we're going to have the Gatekeeper of Ranked back for the majority of ranks, probably, but I still think that really great Kirikos are going to be able to shut down an Ana. So a little bit frustrating, but at least we got some changes very quickly. You tell me how you feel about these patches and what do you want done to Roadhog next. Anyways, thank you so much for coming by. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.